Last week, Clem had one of the best DreamHack EU regional runs of all time. He beat pretty much all of the best EU players, up until where he reached top 3, where there were only 2 Zerg standing in his way, Serral and Reynor, the 2 best Zergs of our time. If you don't know who Serral and Reynor are, they are... I think they won every World Championship recently, or they won 3 out of the last 4 actually, and the other one, Raynor, got second. So definitely the 2 best Zergs of this time. Clem is one of the best TVZ players ever. At some point, I think it was in 2020, Clem was known as having the best TVZ in the world. Maru was probably still the best Terran, but he was struggling a bit against Zerg. These days, Maru has solidified his spot as the #1 Terran in the world, potentially even in TVZ. But Clem, in this series, looked like he was back to his old form. He was playing absolutely amazing. And I'm going to show you my favorite game from both the series against Serral and against Reynor. Now, I haven't done a cast/analysis video in a long time. If you guys want to see more of this, then please let me know in the comments. You know, I can use this extra video time slot, my second video of the day, to post some casts now and then. If you want me to never cast a game again in my entire life, then you can post it as well. Probably not going to be my favorite comment to receive, but feedback is feedback, I guess. Now here we go, Clem against Serral. Now something that I know about Clem that is pretty cool is that Clem... sometimes he feels like he does the same build over and over because his standard TVZ is so good. He is so fast with the multitasking. TVZ really is the perfect matchup for him. But when I see him go up against Serral, he seems to switch his approach a little bit. I feel like against pretty much every Zerg in the world, he'll go with his standard stuff. Very often he'll play 3cc Banshee, and, you know, he doesn't even need to switch it up to win. But against Serral, it seems like he respects Serral macro skills so much, which honestly he should. Serral is just, you know, I've practiced against him before. I can tell you he's absolutely brutal to play against. So against Serral, he very often brings out these weird builds that can catch him off guard. And I don't quite... This is a best of 5, by the way. I'm not quite sure exactly which game it was in the series. But I do know that he brought out a different build in this series. I wasn't sure exactly what he did in all the games, but I did watch this game, and this game was fantastic. And I want to highlight this game even more because this game is played on Data C, which in my opinion is... maybe not the best Zerg map, but one of the best Zerg maps in the map pool. Personally, I would always veto this map. I would never want to play against Zerg on this. This map terrifies me. So the fact that Clem kept it in and was able to have a fantastic showing is just amazing. Now, so far, you can see he is just going for a 3cc opener. And here it's already getting weird. He's going to go for a second factory and a second gas, which means that he is going to go for most likely a blue flame build. Could also be drilling claw mine drops. Now what's actually nice here, guys, is that this game was this game is from DreamHack, so it has, you know, a professional observer in it. So I can actually just let the professional observer do its work and sometimes jump out of it when I want to highlight things myself. That is fantastic. I watched some of my own observing in the past, and even though you guys somehow didn't complain about it that much, I am not a massive fan of my own observing. It feels very choppy and stuff, so I might as well make use of the smooth observing, unless I really want to highlight something myself. Now this is a cool move by Serral, tucking the Overlord in the back of the natural. There's not a lot of maps where you can do this, but on that map, what you can do is you can just fly the Overlord over here and go all the way below the natural to the corner. And most likely the Terran won't see it because who's going to keep a Marine there? And then you have a different Overlord angle to get into the base for once, because very often... Zergs will just fly in from the front, a Terran will see it coming, deny the scout, and that's it. But now he's gonna come in from this angle. But because of the positioning of the factory in the top left of the base, the Overlord is actually not gonna see it. Now, Overlord's vision are pretty big. Let me see what he saw. Yeah, so he only saw the barracks here is pretty weird, I have to admit. I wonder if Serral read into this, because the barracks is supposed to be here, not all the way over there. So that is actually a little bit strange. Now, he still got a starport despite going for a second factory, which kind of makes me think he is going for drilling claw mine drops after. I mean, for now, he's just making a Viking, which, oh, the Zerglings actually get in. That is massive. Okay, that is a pretty big mistake by Clem there. And with pretty big, I mean it could even be disastrous here, because a Zergling scouting this is a big deal. He was probably busy microing his Hellions on the other side of the map. What's really cool about this, the mod this game is hosted, by the way, if you look at the minimap, you can actually see where the players are looking. Like, it might not be as clear for you guys. I know the map is a bit dark and it might ruin the contrast a little bit. But you can see exactly where the players are looking from the minimap. You can see the blue squares, the red squares, or they're more like rectangles, or it's not even a rectangle. What is it? I don't even know what to call this shape. It's like, it's not quite square, so it's not a rectangle. Anyway, Clem is also making an armory and a medevac. Now, this medevac is a little bit too fast to go for drilling claw mine drops, so you might actually use it to drop 4 Hellions, which is a really cool form of aggression that we don't usually get to see. Now, what I do like about TVZ observing, like I said, I'm not observing this myself right now, but most of the time the focus is on the Terran, because the Zerg early game builder is so figured out. Most of the time, I think it's either 7 or 9 queens. There we go. Serral went for 9 queens here, which is very safe. Puts a lot of creep. And it's mostly up to the Terran to decide what the early game is going to look like. So a lot of the focus is on, you know, is the Terran going to do anything outside of the standard 1-on-1? Is he going to go for mech? Is he going to go for bio? Now, what Clem is doing here with his Viking is really cool. If you look at his Viking, what he did with it is he basically cleared the path for the medevac. Now, I think the medevac was still spotted by the Zergling, but it's very important if you use a Viking that you use it in the proper way. And sometimes I coach people. Let's actually look at how many there. Oh, it's actually going to morph them into Blue Flame Hellbats. This is a really cool move. There are if the Bailings weren't there, this could actually be a game-ending move. But even with the Bailings, those are doing a good amount of damage. Hell, here you can see how good they both are at microing. Amazing Evo Chamber wall by Serral, by the way. Does he get the last one too? Actually, a little bit derpy on the last one. The first 3 Evolution Chambers were very clean, but the last one was a bit derpy. But yeah, the fact that he only lost 10 drones here to, I think that was about 10 Hellions getting into his third with Blue Flame and the Hellbat drop in the main is absolutely amazing. If those Bailings weren't there in the main to deal with those Hellbats, it could have been insane, but the Bailings obviously cleared it up. And actually, with the Ling run by, they both did a similar amount of damage. And I would say Serral even got ahead out of that, because losing 3 more workers for such an aggressive opener is not that great. And oh no, guys, look at it. One of the biggest classic Terran mistakes. Now you see it, guys. Even the best Terrans in the world do this. If you do this as well, if you build your factory in the position where you block your own tanks, now you know. Clem does it as well, so it's all justified, guys. Actually, something that's pretty funny that I'll see Terrans do sometimes is if they get a tank stuck like that, they'll just siege it. And they will call it like the anti-F2 defense, you know, because people like to F2 their armies around. But if you have a tank siege at home, I guess it's gonna work. I mean, there is potentially a scenario in the late game where Serral could go for a Nidus, right? And then this one tank could actually deny it. Now, obviously, you don't want to rely on it, so Clem used his medevac to lift it out. Now, he is going for a fast drilling claw drops, though so far, he actually has the mines with his army as opposed to a drop. Normally, you would actually get those in a drop. Let's see how many he has. Yeah, he has 7 mines already. 7 mines for 21 Marines. That is a pretty crazy ratio. Now, for the TVZs Clem played in this series, this was very typical. Normally, Terrans go for tanks first and then mines, or maybe the opposite. Oh, actually, there were so many explosions there, I couldn't even tell who it was good for. I guess in the end, it was pretty even. Okay, a little bit clumsy here. That one tank on the high ground actually saving those SCVs by killing 1 Bailing. And we see the Blue Flame Hellbats still in the army. This is a main problem with Blue Flame Hellbats, by the way. If you guys are actually wondering, why do Terrans not make Hellbats? I'll get back to my previous thought, by the way, don't worry about it. Why do Terrans not make Blue Flame Hellbats with their army instead of mines? It's because Hellbats also die to Bailings. So if you make Marine Hellbat, the answer that Zerg has is they just make more Bailings and they literally don't need to split. They can just straight A move through your army and you make it very easy for them. If you have mines, they need to like send clumps at a time, split their units very well, and if they ever mess up, they get a big hit. So mines are just straight up better. Now, what I was going to say before, what was very typical about Clem's TVZ in this tournament, is that he went mines straight away. Like, very often, he'll make, like, 0 tanks. This game, he only made 1. 1 is also very little. I think 2 or 3 is the standard. I think I see 3 more often. But Clem very often made 0 or 1 tank and just made mines straight away. And his focus was just on outplaying the opponent straight from the get-go. Not playing particularly safe. Just really, like, going for it hard. Which on a map like this is pretty difficult, but it makes sense. Like, I think if you make tanks on this map, it forces you to stay a little bit more defensive. It's a bit too big of a map to push across with siege tanks. So it makes sense, but he did it on every single map, so I think it's just a stylistic thing at this point. Now, I would say Clem has done a really good job, despite the Hellions not really working out, because the supply looks quite good for him. I mean, the way you have to read the supply is that it's pretty much even, because Clem is 17 supply up, but Serral has 1200 minerals in the bank, so if he spends that, the supply would probably be roughly even. Though Serral's ahead in upgrades, Clem did forget his 2-2, by the way. That is a big mistake that you would actually surprisingly quite often see from top players. They're so focused on the aggression that they forget their 2-2. And 2-2 for bio units is a massive deal. I say it all the time in my videos. Marines shoot so fast that one upgrade, an attack upgrade in particular, helps them so much. And it's the same for the Lynx, by the way. Like, having an extra armor against Lynx is fantastic. Lynx being ahead in upgrades makes it really hard to fight against them. Here the Drilling Claw mine drops. How many workers have we killed so far? This is probably not going to do too much. Oh, could be good target fire, though. Actually, he gets 4 banelings for that. It's not bad. Yeah, he's killed only 15 workers. 50 workers is a very little amount of workers to kill for this point in the game. And this makes me even more impressed, because TVC is known as the matchup where you have to do damage as Terran, or Zerg just gets away with it. And it's mostly because of the larva mechanic. If Zerg does not have to spend their larva on making units or like making extra drones, they can drone up super fast to 80 or 90 and just kind of walk away with the game. So the fact that Clem hasn't done that much damage, and it's on a difficult map, but it's still like competitive in terms of supply, I find that very impressive. And it mostly has to do with his speed. Clem is one of the fastest players, in particular when it comes to aggression. I feel like this may be a little bit hard to explain, but I feel like you can be fast in certain ways. If you're fast like Maru, for example, you're just fast in getting everything in check. So Maru will never be late on having his tanks in position, will never be late on his transitions. Clem is just super fast when it comes to aggression. Catching a moment where Clem is not attacking at 2 fronts, it's rare. It's pretty tough. And then you get moments like this, where you just grab a few extra links because he's playing very fast. Serral, obviously an insanely fast player, but no one can look everywhere. Ooh, that medevac almost died on 1 HP. You can tell it's very taxing on the observer here to try and follow everything as well. That must be... if you're an observer in StarCraft, I can imagine it's difficult, but it's also very exciting to watch people like this play against each other, because you really have, you know, to test your own skills as an observer and have to do everything. Like, this is not just about the players anymore, guys. It's about the observer as well, of course. But yeah, you can see Serral's getting everything right now. I see a Lurker and a Nidus, and as a Terran, and I'm pretty sure you guys have suffered from this as well if you're, you know, playing ladder frequently. Lurkers and a Nidus are a very traumatizing combination. I've definitely lost games where I was just completely fine because one Nidus with Lurkers finished it to my main. And you can see, for most of the time, the aggression was just about getting trades. If we look at the units lost, Clem is about 3k ahead in resources lost. But for most of this, it was just about trades. Finally, Clem found a weakness. Serral did not have enough banelings in one spot, and he snipes an entire base for it. I can assure you, there is probably no other Terran in the world that would find this against Serral in a way where, I don't want to call it easy, but it seems like Clem, you know, he's not being particularly stretched out. It's not like he's even maxing out on his speed. I feel like he's just been doing his routine stuff, and he still managed to find a completely free base and kill it. His 5th base, which is just amazing, and that is really, you know, where Clem shines, just the pure aggression. And now, oh, that was actually a little bit of a rough one. I think he lost about 1 medevac full of units that he maybe could have picked up. Also, you know, forgetting the 2-2 definitely hurt him a little bit here, because those trades could have been even better. And now we're into the late game. We're getting into the Ghost Liberator part. And if you have caught up with recent TVZ meta, you'll know that this is where Terran has been shining recently. Like, Terran has not been very good in the mid game. If you watch like the top Terrans play, they very often struggle in the mid game, but they make it happen in the late game with the Ghost. So now we're gonna get a very interesting part in Clem's gameplay. Look how he's targeting the Nidus, by the way. That's actually brilliant that he managed to get that. If like 10 more Lurkers, I don't know how many Lurkers we have. Oh, actually, he doesn't have that many Lurkers. Okay, that's good. But if like a few more Lurkers would have popped out, he could have lost the game instantly. And here you can see how hard it is to clear out the freaking Nidus. That one mine one-shotting 2 Lurkers, though, is fantastic. And there's so much action here. I'm actually struggling to, like, bring my own thoughts into this. So, you know, my bad. But Serral attacking his 3rd base now. A lot of banelings here, but Clem seemed to take a really good trade here. I'm surprised Serral didn't click like a few of those banelings into the 3rd. I think he could have killed all of those SCVs. Maybe he decided it wasn't worth it, but I definitely think that was a missed opportunity. But yeah, like I was gonna say, this is a very interesting part in Clem's gameplay, because most Terrans, and with most Terrans I quite literally mean every Terran besides Clem, like Maru, Cure, all the best Terrans, you name it, Spirit, Hero Marine. When it comes to the late game, they will just sit back. Terran has been having a hard time in his meta moving out a lot, but they are very good at sitting back, so they'll sit back, they'll make planetaries, they'll make Ghost. But Clem very often still wants to be aggressive, despite being in the Ghost phase. So that is, yeah, one of the things I love the most about watching Clem's gameplay is watching him make it work, actually moving out in those long games with Ghost. Because Ghost, just to help you guys understand the way it works, Ghost is most used for its snipe. Not so much for the EMP, but just for the snipe. You one-shot Hydras, you two-shot Lurkers, you two-shot Broodlords, etc. And that's why it's good in the late game. But if a ghost takes damage, the snipes gets cancelled. So if you move out, let's say you're fighting against Ling Bane, you will not be able to get a single snipe off. Not at all. So that's why ghosts are very often just used for defensive play. But Clem is like, it doesn't matter. I'm the best TVZ attacker in the world. I'm just going to keep attacking here. He has a very interesting army composition. He has, what is this, like 5 mines, 2 liberators, and a very small handful of bio. Serral with the burrowed infestor, always very dangerous. But it's going to be scary for Serral to engage this. What is he's going to fungal? Here we go. The fungal hits, then the Banelings roll forward, but the mines were set up, and that's exactly what I wanted to mention. Serral wanted to really go for that with the fungal Baneling, but he had 5 mines to cover first. I think ideally Serral would have tried to trigger those before trying that move, because Clem definitely was saved there by the Widowmine blowing up all the freaking Banelings before they connect with the fungal bio. Let's see what the units loss is now. Clem 4k ahead. It's not even that crazy for a TVZ, by the way. TVZ, typically, Terran is supposed to be a little bit ahead in resources lost because Zerg mines more. But Clem's aggression has been so good, keep in mind he sniped a full base earlier, that he seems to be in a perfectly fine position anyway. He's getting his 6th base up. And as a rule for Terran in a TVZ, if you want to play the late game, if you split the map in half, Terran tends to have a small advantage. If Zerg has 1 base more, I want to say it's pretty even. If Zerg has 2 bases more, or, you know, 3, 4, 5, more than 2 bases, I would say Zerg is ahead. So the fact that Clem is getting pretty close to splitting the map already is, you know, really good sign for him. Now, those mines probably did more damage to the Terran than the Zerg there. Luckily, those medevacs survived on red HP, else it would have really been problematic. And once again, Clem finding an opening just by the 2-prong aggression non-stop the entire game. You know, it's really funny because it looks really hard the way Clem is playing, but as an ex-pro gamer myself, I can tell you, a lot of us feel when we watch Clem is that we could maybe do the same, because it's not like he's doing 5 things at once. He's doing just 2 things at once, right? But if you go over the course of an entire game like this game is already 17 minutes deep. If you try to attack for in 2 places at the same time for an entire game, at some point you will lose your entire army to 10 Banelings. Like, it's so hard to keep the focus. Besides the speed, it's so hard to just keep the focus and concentration to keep attacking at 2 points. And Clem is the only one who can do that without really messing it up at any point. The biggest thing he messed up in this entire game is that he lost, I think, 1 medevac worth of units because he didn't manage to pick them up against the Banelings. And even in that case, he was actually looking at it. And there's a quick EMP there. There's one other threat by the infestors. If you guys have never seen it, infestors can fungal and root your units to, you know, make Baneling super effective. They can also neural a ghost, basically mind control it, and then EMP your other ghost so you can't snipe. Now at this point, Serral actually does not have a lot of late game units. I think this speaks a lot to... if you look at the units tab here, it speaks a lot to Serral believing Clem's ghost control is too good. Because Zergs most of the time play lurkers. It's a bit less popular recently than it was like about a half a year ago. But Zerg most of the time want to play lurkers. But Serral made lurkers for the Nidus. He saw ghosts and he was like, yeah, I'm never making a lurker again. So I think Serral either thinks lurkers is not that meta anymore, or he's just respecting Clem's skills in the macro game too much. Or not too much, but just like, he respects it a lot, basically, right? Whether it's too much or not, that's not up for us to decide, but that's probably what's going on. And I do really like the addition of these Liberators. Most of the time, with... Oh, there's actually... These Claw Ghosts are destroying everything. Is there even an Overseer here? Oh no, he's not bringing an Overseer. Those 5 Ghosts are just destroying everything right now. This actually, they're getting infinite amount of kills. They're just one-shotting all these Zerglings, or all 2-shotting them. But that was incredible efficiency. If we look now, by the way, Clem almost 10k ahead in resources lost, which I think the last time we looked it was 4k. So he almost traded 6k more efficiently in like the last 3 minutes or so. But yeah, normally Terrans just make Liberators. They'll siege them back in the base and they leave them there forever. Clem is actually taking them in his attack all the time. And very frequently they don't seem that effective, but Clem has actually made them seem super effective. Like the Ling Banelings are not getting good trades. There are the defensive Liberators taking care of the Zergling run by, which is great. I'm surprised he didn't kill this hatchery at any point, by the way. Like those 5 Ghosts, I know they were having a fantastic time killing, you know, all those Zerglings for free, but killing that red HP hatchery must have been very tempting at some point. Not that many workers went down this game, actually. 39 against 49. I feel like in TVZ it could definitely be way worse. And one thing that I haven't touched on, by the way, that is very different in this game compared to other TVZs, which is just a product of Clem's insane speed and a double prong, is that there's like no creep on this map. Yo, that planetary actually scaring off that infestor on the right side. That looked like a small thing, but it actually helped a lot to not let the infestor get closer. And obviously at the same time, well, the observer and me, we were all focusing on the left side. The right base is falling once again to like a very weird army of, what is that, 8 ghosts and 4 marines. Now there's queens, but queens is like one of the best units in the game, but against ghosts probably not that much. And just like that, I say like it's easy, Clem takes down Serral. Alright, and the second game I want to highlight is Clem against Raynor. As you can see, the score is 3-3. I do actually know the score of this one. Clem also with a master performance here. Very cool. Clem in this game, he's going to get really far behind to some master moves from Raynor, but yet he's going to hang in there and survive for an eternity, which was absolutely insane. And I just really wanted to show you guys how he did it. Now, like I said, Clem against Raynor and Serral does have a little bit of a different approach. So for this series, and I can actually give a little bit of backstory how we got to this point, right? So Clem came from the loser's bracket. Like I said, Clem had one of the best runs ever. It was from the loser bracket where he pretty much took down every top European. And he went up against Raynor. The way this works is if you advance to the finals in a double elimination system, very often the player that comes from the winner bracket starts with a 1-0 lead. And they also get the 1 veto, I believe. Or no, they actually do it without vetoes. It's just that the last map is not played. But Raynor started with a 1-0 lead. And then he continued by winning the first 2 games. So Raynor was up 3-0 in this best of 7. Followed by Clem figuring out the formula and winning 3 games in a row. And then game 7 was Waterfall, which is actually a crazy map to play. Because Waterfall had quite the journey. The backstory of this map is that when it came out, everyone was convinced this was the new Beckett Industries. If you don't know what that means, there was a map pool. I think that was actually last map or 2 map pools ago. There was a map called Beckett Industries, which was just an insane Terran map. It was so good for Terran. No one wanted to play against it. The only people that played on it against Terran, I think, were like cheesy Protoss players. And at some point, I think I saw people play it against Clem as well, because Zergs played against Clem in particular. Because Clem's TVZ was so good, they figured they might as well play Beckett, which was a small map, to try and cheese him out. But after a while, Zergs actually started feeling fine on this map. I feel like in particular Raynor was very strong on this map. I saw him beat a lot of good players. I saw him beat Hero Marine. I think I saw him beat, I think it was a Korean Terran, maybe like Cure or Bunny, something like that. Don't remember quite who it was. But Raynor has seen really good on this. So now we're on this map that made this complete change. People are not even really sure what race it's good for now. And it's gonna be game 7. And in the 3 games Clem won, he played a very similar build. Like I said, against Zergs that are not Serral, he really likes to repeat builds and just figure out the perfect formula to defeat a certain player. And he was following a very, similar formula for all those games that he won. And now we're in game 7 on a map where people are not sure who it's good for. And the way that impacts players, by the way, is that, let's say you play TVZ, right? And we're watching TVZ anyway, so you might as well use TVZ as an example. If I would play on a map that's good for Terran against a Zerg, I would play a very safe build, so it allows me to get into the macro game for free, right? So what happens very often is that Terrans, they win a bunch of games. Zergs are trying to cheese because the map is not that great for them. Terrans will play Banshee, for example, like Clem is doing here. But then the meta shifts, and Zergs realize Terrans are playing really safe on that map. So they will start playing normal builds or even extra greedy. And then the balance of the map kind of shifts as well, because the builds really matter, the meta really matters. It can shift win rates by even 5%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, if a map goes from 55% to 50, that's a pretty big deal. 55% win rate on a map is considered to be quite imbalanced, where 50 is completely balanced, right? So, and now we're at this point in the meta where Clem is going to go for Banshee, but Raynor probably knows that and is going to try to play greedy, and we're going to see how that clash of styles works out. Now, I think I saw one game where Clem went for Cloakless Banshee, so it's definitely not like he did the exact same build in all of these games. Now he's going for Cloak Banshee, he's making a second one. One game I saw him go for Cloakless. So it's slightly different, but it's still a relatively same formula where he wants to play safe and go into a macro game. Now he's gonna go for 3 barracks pretty fast. He made 8 Did he actually lose the Hellions? No, right? No, I think he lost a Reaper maybe. And looks like he cancelled a building, else I have no idea what makes you lose 24 resources. But how can you even lose 24 resources? That's kind of crazy. Like if you cancel a refinery, I think you lose like 18 resources or something. If you cancel a depot, it's like 25. So maybe it rounded down 25 because that's how math works, right? Anyway, I'm not sure. But he made 8 Hellions. it looked like he really wanted to right-click the Hellions into the base earlier, but Raynor was prepared. And now we're going to be able to see how he's going to use those 8 Hellions. He's probably, knowing him, he's probably just going to use it to deny creep over and over, because Clem, as we saw it in the last game, he does not like the Zerg opponent to have creep. And now, he's actually coming with the 2 Banshees in the front, which means he probably wants to go for the Queens here. Raynor very fast. Oh, actually, Raynor was perfectly prepared for this. Not just the Queens in position, but even an Overseer. I feel like normally... Actually, he has Overseers on both sides. Wow, that is hyper prepared. Look, in the left side, he also has 3 Queens with an Overseer. Very well done by Raynor. And this is exactly what I was talking about, right? Clem went for the Banshees to be safe, but now the Banshees got absolutely shut down and didn't do anything at all. And now it's basically wasted tech. Really good Evolution Chamber block there by Raynor as well. We saw that in the last game too from Serral. All these top Zergs, it's so hard to get the Hellions inside, because even if they're underprepared, they're fast enough to just put Evo Chambers in the wall to plug it, and the Hellions can't even get in. Now there, I think Clem might have had a chance to run by, but it would have been very risky. There's one rule I can share with you guys if you want to learn when to YOLO your Hellions and when to not do it. Is that typically, you do not want to run past Queens to run by. Oh, double Spore! Wow, the defense here has actually been insane. That Banshee barely survives, which is very, very lucky for Clem there. Well, never mind, it's dead now. Well, it got a drone, so it didn't die for free at least. But yeah. So now... Oh, I always want to keep talking, but there's so much action in these games. Links are coming back. Actually, I'm not gonna lie, I did forget what I was talking about just now. I feel like I had a thought to finish. Hopefully I got back to it at some point, or you guys can tell me, you know, in the comments, and then I'll finish my thought. I think usually I remember my thought, though. It does feel like Clem is playing a little bit... No, actually not greedy. For some reason I thought he had a 4CC down already, but it's actually his second factory that's super fast. Check it out, he made a second factory before... even making the fourth and fifth barracks reactors. And I just remembered what I was talking about. A tip when run buying Hellions is you don't usually want to run past Queens, because if they have Links on the other side, your Hellions are going to end up being squashed between Queens and Links, and your Hellions are going to shoot the Queens. And if you're going to have to manually target Links with your Hellions, it's just an absolute disaster. So if you want to run by your Hellions, do it when the Queens are out of position, so you can only fight the Links. If you're ever fighting both Links and Queens, it's just terrible. Now, really good lock in there by Clem. I think he also has a wall there, so he should be able to kill all of these Links. Good moves there by Clem. As you can tell, Raynor is already up to 82 workers, so, you know, the fact that he's playing a little bit greedy definitely working out. Obviously, Clem has not made any mistakes yet. 474 resources lost despite all of that aggression is obviously fantastic. Now, what's hard about this map for Terran, just to, like, you know, try to find the advantages for Zerg here, is that... Since the map is small, it also, well, it's small and it also has a lot of entrances. So it's pretty easy for Zerg to set up counterattacks. Like here, Raynor is defending. At some point, he could just send in a counterattack from here and it would be pretty hard to defend. There you can see a few Bailings rolling in from the natural. He didn't see that. Oh, that, yeah, I thought it was going to look painful. It looks pretty painful. Loses 5 Marines and probably going to lose about... Okay, 3 SCVs, not that bad. I think Raynor could have killed that clump on top. And here you can see that Raynor is basically... The way I like to see it is the Clem of Zerg. Raynor, I feel like Serral plays a perfectly controlled game. He's very fast, but his gameplay mostly comes down to controlling the game perfectly, never making a mistake, getting ahead, winning the game in the macro game. Has really good late game. But Raynor is more like Clem, where he's just super fast, and he will always be trying to do things on multiple screens at once. So you could see there that this time, it was not Clem initiating the double prong, it was actually Raynor going for the run by and the attack at the front. And now, yeah, you can tell they're both all over the place. You can see an army moving out on the right side already while Clem is pressuring on the left side. He's microing those units back. And you can see the army on the right side is already posturing to attack that new, fresh 5th base. Now, Raynor did actually forget an upgrade here. So, Clem forgot his 2-2 in the last game. Raynor is now forgetting +2... I guess he wanted to get +2 melee since he's playing Hydras. There's also a chance he wanted to get +1 range. So here, another run-by for Raynor. And at the same time, while defending a run by, Clem is trying to get in, dropping in the main. And here you can see a strength of Raynor that Serral was maybe lacking a bit in the last game, where Raynor, through the double prong aggression, is always getting damaged on himself. Like, Clem would have had a better economy if it wasn't for this. It's actually not that many workers killed yet. I think it's actually going to ramp up more and more. So far, it was pretty much just those Links and the first Banelings that did some damage. And you can tell by looking at the minimap that Clem is already not as active as he was in the last game, because Raynor is also attacking him back. And I talk about this a lot in my videos, that taxing people's APM is very important. If you're as good as Clem, And I can say this with relative certainty. If you're as good as Clem, let's say we ask Clem to play a game against a Zerg that's maybe slightly worse than him, right? Let's take a 6.7k European Zerg, you know, roughly top 5 GM, or top 10 GM rather. If Clem would play like he is, there's a good chance he just smashes. If Clem would use his same mechanics in micro, but does a strategy where he sits back home, he probably loses, because the other Zerg is pretty much going to be able to play like Serral. If you don't need to spend your APM on defending all this stuff, you're going to play so much more above your skill level just because you have nothing to deal with. And you can see here that this is the strength of both players, that they're both playing a little bit worse than they would against, like, me, for example, right? Because I would not play as fast as Clem, I would not tax their APM as much, and they would just have an easier time. They can set up more attacks themselves, they will not make any mistakes in the macro. Now, these players, I mean, you can tell Clem had, like, he has, like, 50 minerals, he's literally making units well, he was splitting there, he was below 100 minerals for, like, that entire fight. These players are not gonna make mistakes in the macro in general, or not a lot anyway. Like, Raynor has 1k in the bank, but that's because he's maxed. I'm surprised to see he has not gone for lurkers yet, I believe. I feel like normally, it's T, right? Yeah, there's actually no lurker den here. And normally lurker den feels like I want to say potentially like a finishing move. On a lot of maps, it's the move where you just want to be safe and go to the late game. On maps where it's small, if Raynor suddenly morphs a bunch of lurkers here, which could have been at this point, well, actually, you don't really want to get them without a hive upgrade, so that makes sense. But if he would make 10 lurkers here and siege the base, there's no liberators, there's no tanks, no ghost. Clem would just suffer. And now, obviously, even though he's being attacked, he has another army on the left side. Though these queens probably have enough transfusion to trade against this just fine. But I guess taxing Queen's energy is a resource of some kind, but only if he manages to attack there again later. Like, obviously, making Queens waste their energy, if you're not going to kill them later, it doesn't do anything. And now, this is the point when I was talking about Raynor has done a lot of good run-bys. He actually hasn't killed that many workers, but he has forced the workers to go away from the mining all the time. He's killed a bunch of depots. As you can tell, Clem is still supply blocked. And now Raynor is up a comfortable 25 supply and a bank upgrade. The economy is better. And I hope Clem reacts. Oh no, that's like 25 freaking SCVs, guys. 24 SCVs going down. And now Clem is down to 54 while Raynor is still maxed. Now, there's actually one thing that's important when you watch a TVZ or when you play a TVZ, when you analyze your own replays. If you look at the supply very often lies in TVZ because what matters most is the baneling count. Before, Raynor was maxed with 50 banelings, I believe, which makes his army incredibly strong. Right now, he's maxed with just 16 banelings. So even though the supply looked the same, Raynor's supply now is definitely worse than before. If Raynor had 50 banelings here, Clem would be very, very sad. Right now, he would still be able to defend. Now, yeah, he doesn't want to send that other medevac back because it might get sniped by the Hydras, probably for the better. But yeah, now you can tell Clem is down 30 supply. And personally, I think you guys probably feel the same, but the most impressed I can feel by watching StarCraft is by watching people do something that I cannot quite do, right? So what I very often had against Zerg is that I was a very fast player. When I was in my peak, I was a very fast player. I think I was pretty similar to Clem, but worse in the late game. So even in my best, what I often felt like is if I got behind against Zerg, I would not really have a way to come back. Like, I really wasn't quite sure how to come back against an overwhelming Zerg opponent, right? Because if a Zerg has the lead, they will creep the entire map, they will make their 100 drones, they will make their endgame units, and that's it, right? But Clem, in this tournament, he got behind very often, but he makes the games where he's behind look so competitive. Either he wins or they're incredibly competitive, and that's what impresses me, you know, just an incredible amount. And I love the composure that he's being attacked by a pretty big army on the right side, but he still has like 40-50 supply on this left side because he's so confident he can still defend. Oh no, please don't. Okay, those SCVs walking there were very scary. If the Baileys would have ran up, they probably could have killed both the Marines and the SCVs, but they were a little bit in the back of the army. Maybe a little bit clumsy by Raynor there, but at the same time, it is difficult for Zerg to plan that fight. And let me explain why. Because you would think the Baileys go on front, they just kill, right? But if the Baileys go on front, the entire DPS of the Terran army is going to be on the Baneling. So at that point, you don't even need to micro. You can just A-move and the Banelings will die. So to do that move, you need to have enough Banelings to get through the entire DPS of the Terran army. If you don't have that, you need to distract with Lynx or Hydras first. But then in that case, you can see the Banelings kind of derp in the back a little bit and they don't quite get to the army. Now, at this point, the supply is pretty much evened up. Raynor still a little bit ahead with the 1k bank. But Clem actually has... I don't know how, but he managed to saturate 5 bases. The income here is pretty much the same. Raynor mining a little bit more gas. But Clem managed to get 5 bases and knock Raynor down to 5 bases. Remember what I said in the last game, guys. An even base count is good for Terran. And Clem has somehow come back from, I believe, 155 against 200 supply, with Raynor having a bank and himself not having a bank, to pretty much being even supply and even in bases, if you calculate the banks in. As you can see, Raynor spent a bit of money, and now he is pretty much even in supply. Clem also going in there to snipe a Viper, puts the Marauders in front. Amazing micro by Clem, soaks all the bailing shots up, and as you can see here, Clem actually reached this point way faster than against Serral, despite being in a worse position where he's up 10k in resources lost. So despite being in a worse position, he found incredible efficiency and has actually even up the game. And now we're getting to a point, as you can see, 4 ghosts out on the field, where Clem is getting ghost. And we saw how that went last game. The last game when Clem got ghost out, he actually, I don't want to say easily because that almost feels disrespectful. Oh, those mines actually killed the full medevac, I think. That seemed actually a little bit rough. But now we're getting to a point where, yeah, Clem might just be in a super comfortable shot with his ghost here. Now, I did spot a little mistake there. I'll highlight it in a bit. Raynor taking some good fights here, to be honest. I think he killed the ghost off. There's actually no ghost left. He's going to kill this base, most likely, with the Hydras. And Raynor definitely fighting back. As you can see here, Raynor fell maybe a bit behind. You could consider it even, but I would say he fell a little bit behind, and he's still fighting back because he is the Clem of Zerg after all. Now, I wanted to highlight a mistake that I can't highlight anymore because the base is dead, but Clem actually misplaced his base. He had to lift it to some harassment at some point, then he put it back, but it was actually off by 1 hex, I believe. So his mining was slightly inefficient. Now he's making reactor liberators. I'm actually not quite sure if Clem believes that those liberators are very useful, or if he just has enough medevacs that he wants to spend his production. Because I think a little bit of both. Liberators are good units, but theoretically the Viper should just destroy them. A Viper with full energy has 2 abducts. You can just pull 2 liberators and they're gonna die to the Hydras. So yeah, liberators are very often a bit questionable. They can be very useful, but they can also just get abducted, so I'm not sure. Oh, he's not actually looking here. Oh, that's a rare mistake by Clem, guys. There you go. That's a game 7 mistake right there. He was nervous, and he didn't manage to keep the double prong. He did do damage in the middle, but yeah, he wasn't paying attention there for a second, and the lurkers just disintegrated this army. Now, normally here, this looks like a very scary position to have this many lurkers in between, but Raynor does not have any support for them. Here the liberators are going to come into action, and this is very important, guys. Lurkers are very often seen as one of the best units in ZVT, but they only become the best units once they have their hive upgrades. Raynor here, there's 2 hive upgrades. One makes them burrow pretty much instantly. One gives them more range. Raynor has the burrow upgrade, or the range upgrade, but not the burrow speed upgrade. So what happened there is that the liberators, very useful by the way, the liberators made him reposition, and then he didn't burrow fast enough to deal with the army. If he had the burrow upgrade there, the lurkers probably stay alive and he falls back. But because he was lacking that, I think he must have forgotten it because he has enough money to build it. He has 14 lurkers there. Without the burrow upgrade, they're just not as good. You see that they burrow quite slowly there compared to the normal like instant burrow, and it's actually, you know, that's a very painful mistake. I'm not quite sure if he forgot it because it seemed like he just wanted to go for a game ending time through the middle, which didn't work out. But at this point he definitely should be getting the burrow upgrade. Really good run by Raynor here. I almost wanted to play say Serral. It's quite hard to distinguish 2 European Zergs that are that good there when you cast them in the same video, right? But now at this point, Clem up to 20 supply more, 15 supply at this point. 5 bases against 6 base, actually. So Raynor does have more bases. Very impressive that he managed to come back from that. Raynor actually has more income right now. About 700 minerals and 400 gas more, looks like. So at this point, like, Raynor looks to be aggressive, but you would have to imagine it would be better for Raynor to sit back. Though without that burrow upgrade, I'm just not quite sure if he can maneuver enough. Now let's look at Clem's army composition. It's really interesting that he doesn't have a single Marauder here, by the way. Marines are obviously even worse. Oh, he got an EMP on the Viper. I know that Ghost got abducted, but the EMP was actually used there, and he got a snipe too. But yeah, Marines are even worse against Lurkers than Marauders are, because they almost get one-shot. So it's very interesting that he doesn't even want a single Marauder, he only wants to make Ghost. In case you guys didn't know, you need a tech lab to make Marauders and to make Ghost. So he's quite literally using every single tech lab to only make Ghost. He literally jumped to 0 gas there for a second. Not sure if you guys saw that, literally 0 gas. And now he's making Marauders again. Though I actually think he's making those Marauders because he doesn't have enough gas for Ghost. Because if we look at the formula, he quite literally has 0 Marauders. It doesn't make a lot of sense that he wants them now, rather than Ghost. Especially because Terrans tend to go up to at least 10 Ghost. And in Clem's case, I've seen him go up to 35 Ghost or more. I'm not kidding. I think I've even seen him get 40 Ghost at some point. He really likes to make mass Ghost. And here, there's just not enough Lurkers. Normally, Lurkers fantastic. Really good split there by Clem, by the way. That was actually one of the cleanest fights against Lurkers I have seen. Like ever. Normally I feel like at least like 15 more Marines would have died. In my fight they definitely would have, trust me. But that was a super clean split. And now Clem is just pushing forward. And I think at this point, Clem, maybe I could have asked him about it actually before making this video. Because I do remember seeing the ending of this game. But maybe Clem was also surprised that they were burrowing very slow. Actually, this happened to me before, where I would play against a unit I thought was really strong. And at some point I would be like, man, these units are actually not that good. But then you realize after the game that they just forgot an upgrade like speed or something like that. And I wonder if that is what Clem was thinking. Like, man, I'm fighting really well against these Lurkers. Am I just the god of micro or something? But then in the end they just forgot an upgrade like what happened here. Clem is killing the left side base casually while fighting the Lurkers on the mini-map. Actually, I didn't think he fight the Lurkers because the Lurkers are still alive. I think he fought something else. Maybe like killed some larvae or some queens or something. But here we go. One of the last mining bases going down. At this point, the income obviously skyrocketing for Clem, and there's nothing left for Raynor. He just has a puny base on the left side. Raynor trying the best he can, but at this point, he needs... actually, the one thing Raynor could do is burrow his Lurkers. Lurkers have a function called Hold Fire. You can make them not shoot, and then activate it when the units are on top of you. I feel like that's the only way Raynor could even kill this army. Obviously, that would not be enough to win, but he would be able to kill one army at least. Here we go. Clem with the surround. There's a lot of units on top as well. And just like that, guys, Clem makes the reverse sweep happen. 0-3 into 4-3 against Raynor. He beat, I think in order, he beat Lambo, Max Pax, Hero Marine. Who else was it? Showtime, and then Serral, and then Reynor, which is... that could be the 6 best players in Europe besides him. I'm not sure if it completely is, but it actually does sound like it could be one of the best runs ever, one of the hardest DreamHack EU runs ever. An absolutely incredible TVZ. Feels good to see my friend Clem back on top in TVZ at least. Hope he can show it in Atlanta as well. DreamHack Atlanta. If you guys did enjoy this, make sure to tune into DreamHack Atlanta. That's going to be, I think, 18 to 20 November. Global event is going to have all these guys there. And for me, hope you guys really enjoyed this rare cast. I haven't been doing it in a while. Make sure to give me feedback. I would love to hear why my casting sucks. Make sure to like the video though. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios.